and check out my channel. I'm going to have a look at the market, checking what's going on midweek on a couple of assets like crude oil, natural gas, copper, nickel, platinum, and coffee. So let's get started with WTI crude oil. Was mentioning intention to short this market, but not from here, or not from that level, as he was actually still showing some strength to the upside, especially after the very bearish report we got last week, and we've seen the price continue to compress just under 48. So I believe at that point, despite the divergence we're having now on the 4 hours, that we're going to move higher and potentially break that 48 level, and we have enough room now to move and go slightly below 50, and that's probably where I'll be looking at entering short. So as we're having that divergence, I'm really cautious buying that last leg, because it might actually not get that high and collapse entirely to the bottom. Wouldn't be the first time that WTI is doing something like this. So in that situation, as we're still having that potential rising wedge that might actually cap the price a bit lower, it's just not worth taking the risk of opening long here, in my opinion. So of course that can be traded for day trading, but for swing trade I believe this is not the right level. So yeah, definitely watching this. Should we actually arrive at 50, make another touch on that trend line and get some rejection at that point, be definitely opening short position, as the potential to the on the downside will be rather significant. So we are looking now at that point here. So this is at least a retest of 45, but potentially going back down to 43.5. So let's move to natural gas. So natural gas been not doing much over the past few days. So got actually stuck after the gap up to some sort of range that is actually quite tight. If we look here, we got that divergence that's still playing support here on the trend line, and on the recent drop to 2.6. So I'm still short natural gas, but not entirely. I'm waiting for potentially another push outside of that range to potentially go up to 275. Could see a bit higher, maybe 276, maybe 280 at the maximum, and then I think we would actually resume the move to the downside very quickly with the target that's 2.1. So of course, maybe not that fast, could they take longer, of course, to the end of the year, potentially getting into January, but still that's the, in principle, that's the trade that I'm actually taking. Of course we cannot exclude complete down from here directly, but it looks at the moment relatively solid, and since we're having the report on tomorrow and some cold weather at the moment, there's some speculation that could actually hold the price for now, and at least prevent this to actually move much lower in the short term. Moving to copper. Copper is an interesting configuration. So as the first time we got a proper divergence on the daily chart here. Many attempts to actually short that market alongside that previous rising wedge we had here, and that did actually broke to the upside, so that was rather hard to short, and yeah, of course was actually much better to actually be long on this market. But yes, the setup was definitely a concern with many divergence and that rising wedge, but it did actually manage to break higher. I believe we getting to a top here at 260, but still showing some strength, so we might actually see another attempt to break above that divergence, so we could actually see above 3.6, and I'll be looking at shorting copper from there. It could be not too ambitious trade, with just reaching to the other end of the channel and potentially see the move continuing to the upside later. We might not actually break that channel entirely and still get some support at 3.3, but still a valid trade, 10% down could be attempted. So definitely the setup is there. We're gonna be seeing some reversal, but either it's gonna go that low or break lower. It's a different question. We're still having, I think, on the daily more significant divergence, actually pointing to more important correction. So that question will remain: are we going to see this clearing? That would actually mean a major drop, at least below 3. That seems quite far away, in my opinion, given the price action we had and the bullish we're having on the market at the moment. But yes, there's still a possibility, but I think profit taking at 3.3 will be quite sufficient for that trade. Looking at nickel, we're having a bit of a similar configuration, but we might actually have a first top here. So the daily divergence well in place. It's actually potentially a more ambitious trade. Of course, we're seeing here that could actually go back down to the other end. That's slightly below 16, so it's not very ambitious either. If that divergence were to actually clear, we would actually potentially break a little bit lower, potentially look at the 14,300. That's a much better trade. Yeah, we're looking at this potentially double top would actually be a little bit safer here, making another touch on that daily divergence trend line before we actually could see the move dropping down for good, so keeping an eye on this as well. Now moving on the platinum. Platinum has been also struggling since the break out we got at 1030, and now we're having pullback that did actually move a bit lower. Then we got to move to the upside now, and it's struggling to break higher. So I still believe the configuration is rather bullish until we actually keep moving down and break some more significant level under 1000. But at the moment it's clearly struggling. We could still push a bit lower on that RSI trend line, returning to 1025.20 potentially before we can actually see some more upside for platinum. And finally, looking at coffee got that breakout was looking for quite some time on 124, and a bit similar to platinum. It's now a bit struggling higher here, so we can see that we're having a major divergence that's actually pointing to a little bit of more of a correction that could actually go down to 120. And as we can see here, we're also having a divergence on the last move on the 4 hours, so that's also pointing to something that would correct around 120. So potentially we should see some continuation of that move to the upside, but there's no bit of a chance that we could actually pull back before moving higher. The final target still sits around 145. Should we actually manage to catch some more momentum, but short term, I think higher chance is for this to push back a bit lower to 120 before we actually resume and break for good and go to the final target 145. So yeah, that's about it for tonight. I'll do more check on probably crude oil and nat gas over the weekend. Until then, I wish you safe trading. Thanks for watching, and I speak to you soon. Cheers, bye.